My name is Susan, and I'm a 34-year-old housewife living in Austin, Texas. I want to share an unexpected story about how I fell into an uncomfortable situation involving my husband's boss, Mr. Richard. My husband, David, works at a well-known home appliance company, and Mr. Richard, his boss, is a 43-year-old man. He's fairly good-looking, but also known to be a tough boss. There were always rumors about his flirtations and inappropriate behavior. At work, things David and I would laugh about during conversations, never imagined I might become part of one of those stories. A little over 3 years ago, David was up for a long-awaited promotion. He had worked hard for it, but Mr. Richard kept stalling the process, finding one excuse after another. Around that time, David was sent abroad on a 2-week business trip, leaving me alone at home. A couple of days after David left, I received an unexpected phone call from his boss, Mr. Richard. He mentioned that David had accidentally taken an important document with him and asked if I could search for it in his office bag. He explained that his car was in the shop, so he couldn't come to pick it up himself, and he needed it urgently. I managed to find the document and decided to take an Uber to the company office. It was almost 7 p.m. by the time I arrived, and the building felt eerily quiet. As I entered, I noticed that everyone had left for the day except Mr. Richard, who was still in his office. I knocked on his door and stepped inside. He greeted me warmly, thanking me for going out of my way to help him. As I handed him the document, he smiled and said, "I really appreciate this, Susan. It must have been inconvenient for you, so how about I take you out to dinner to make up for it?" His sudden invitation caught me off guard, and I tried to decline, feeling a bit uncomfortable. I stammered, "Oh, I don't think I'm dressed for something like that, and I really should be getting home." But Mr. Richard wasn't one to take no for an answer. He smiled charmingly and said, "Susan, I insist. It's the least I can do for your trouble. Besides, you look absolutely stunning just as you are." Feeling cornered and not wanting to offend him, I reluctantly agreed to join Mr. Richard for dinner. He called a cab and we headed to a cozy little restaurant. Throughout the meal, he kept the conversation engaging, sharing stories of his travels abroad. At first, I felt awkward, but his charming manner gradually put me at ease, and by the end of the evening, I almost wished it wouldn't end. When the cab dropped us back at my place, I unbuckled my seatbelt, ready to say goodbye, but Richard gave me a playful smile and asked, "Susan, aren't you going to invite me in for some coffee?" A wave of anxiety ran through me. I didn't want to seem rude or ungrateful, so with hesitation, I invited him in. Inside, I asked him to wait in the living room while I prepared the coffee. As I stood in the kitchen, stirring the cups, I felt him approach. He said he wanted to help, brushing his hand lightly against mine as he reached for a spoon. I pretended not to notice, but my heart was starting to race. We took the coffee to the living room and sat down on the couch. He sat a little too close, and I tried to focus on my coffee. But then he leaned in, his voice smooth and soft. You looked absolutely stunning at that office party. I've been waiting for a chance to tell you that in person." Before I could respond, he gently took my hand in his and smiled warmly. "Susan," he whispered, "may I gently hold these lovely hands for just a moment? A little appreciation for their beauty?" I instinctively tried to pull my hand away, but he held on softly, bringing my fingers to his lips. "Richard, please," I stammered nervously. This doesn't feel right." He leaned closer, his gaze intense. "Susan, I won't be able to leave without touching these, at least just once," he whispered. Before I could react, he leaned in and held my hands gently. I tried to turn away, but he pulled my hands closer, wrapping me in a tight embrace. His touch sent a confusing wave of emotions through me. My heart raced uncontrollably, and I struggled to pull away, murmuring weak protests. "But Richard was relentless, Susan," he whispered, his voice low and determined. Tonight, we're going to spend these moments together, and when your husband returns, that promotion he's been waiting for will be his." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Conflicted emotions flooded my mind. Part of me was horrified, wanting to push him away, while another part was strangely drawn to the thrill of something so forbidden. He came more close again, deeper this time. He started to explore mine. My attempts to resist faded as the intensity grew. He was captivating, and the weight of the moment made it hard to think clearly. A dangerous mix of fear, excitement, and guilt washed over me. After what felt like an eternity of intense touching, Richard whispered, "Come with me," his hands exploring with growing familiarity. He guided us into the bedroom, and the weight of the moment felt overwhelming. He smiled warmly and said, "Let's play a game this night fully, together." Without hesitation, he started, and I followed him, nervous yet unable to stop myself. Once we stood before each other, Richard came to me in a warm tune. His hands gently explored something again, his fingers tracing my skin. I couldn't help but let out a soft sound as his kisses trailed along my skin, lingering with tenderness. He playfully explored, sending a warm sensation through me. I gently ran my fingers through his hair, feeling the intensity build as the moment deepened. Slowly, Richard knelt, his hand gently brushing against my stomach. Each touch sent a wave of warmth through me. He paused, his eyes full of admiration, taking in the moment. With a soft smile, he whispered, "You're beautiful, Susan. Everything about you." He was touching me gently. Each touch felt tender, making my breath quicken. He moved with care, as if savoring the closeness, each moment carrying a quiet intensity. My skin tingled with the warmth of his presence, every touch making my heart race. His closeness brought an undeniable sense of connection, and I could feel my body responding to the tenderness. The sensations were overwhelming, pulling me deeper into the moment, craving the comfort of his embrace. I couldn't hold back any longer. The heat between us was undeniable, and I whispered breathlessly, "Please, I need you now." I was pulling him closer, my nails gently tracing lines along his back. Every inch of me wanted him, the anticipation building until it felt almost unbearable. With a soft smile, he leaned down, meeting my gaze. His presence felt like both a promise and a surrender, as if the night belonged entirely to us. He softly encouraged me to wrap my hands around him, inviting me to feel the warmth of his presence and the intensity of the moment. For a fleeting instant, a voice in my mind cautioned me about the consequences, reminding me of my commitment to my husband and the risks we were contemplating. Yet, as desire wrapped around me like a warm blanket, those thoughts gradually slipped away. With eagerness, I pulled him closer, the excitement coursing through me as he pressed against me. Our breaths intertwined, filled with anticipation. When we finally connected, it was a rush of sensation, an exquisite blend of emotions that stirred within me, creating a moment both intense and exhilarating. With each movement, I could feel the connection between us deepening, the world outside fading away as we lost ourselves in the moment. My body responded instinctively, welcoming him, and I was consumed by the overwhelming thrill of our union. He paused, his eyes locking with mine, the connection between us electric and intense. Slowly, he leaned in, sending waves of warmth through me. With each gentle move, our movements seemed to fall into a natural rhythm, drawing me deeper into a moment filled with closeness and shared emotion. I started moving in time with him, our bodies becoming lost in a dance of happiness. As his thrusts grew more intense, the way he caressed me became wilder, igniting a fire within me. Every feeling was heightened, and I felt like I was floating on a cloud, completely enveloped in the moment. His actions became more fervent, each thrust sending waves of exhilaration through me, pushing me closer to the edge. I could feel the heat building, a whirlwind of emotions crashing together as I surrendered to the experience. The boundaries between us began to blur, and I felt as if I might dissolve into him entirely. I found myself pleading, "Please, sweetheart, let yourself go. I want to feel every part of you." As the moment of climax approached, everything around me spun wildly, and then he became still, deep within me. I could hear my voice rising in a mix of exhilaration and desire as he surrendered completely, releasing himself with warmth and intensity. Overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, I instinctively drew him closer, feeling the connection between us grow stronger. Every touch and every movement seemed to heighten the emotions, as if we were both caught in a powerful and shared experience. As we slowly came down from the peak, he relaxed and looked into my eyes, whispering that my love was the most incredible experience of my life. We shared amazing moments 2 more times that night, and by morning, I could feel the lingering effects. My body ached with the memory of our closeness. Richard visited me regularly while my husband was away, and each encounter was filled with passion and intensity. As time went on, I discovered I was going to become the mom of a baby. The news left me feeling overwhelmed, and I was unsure of what to do. Richard reassured me, suggesting that I consider keeping the baby since there was no danger to my health and my husband remained blissfully unaware of our affair.